This mom said, how do I get my daughter to not be attached to her phone like a piece of clothing?
Good luck with that. I'm assuming that we've got an adolescent or a pre-adolescent kind of daughter here, and I don't know. Was your mom able to pry your phone from you,
Well, you know
Tori?
what? I didn't have a phone until I was 14, 15. I was not quite
Yeah,
in the generation where it was, super all the
like
time and there was so
issued
many
with
apps.
you with a Bible or a bottle, and diapers, phone, kind of everything.
Yeah, yeah. I was not in the generation where it was just like native users of technology and apps were all over and all of that stuff. So apps and things like Instagram and stuff like that really didn't start coming out until I was in like later in high school.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I didn't have this problem, but I do now. Honestly, I do now have to be very careful with how often I'm on my phone. And I can't imagine what it would have been like in like sixth or seventh grade if I had
I
had access
know,
to
right?
what I do
You
now.
know, I don't want to change the question or turn it around, but I get the same question sometimes from husbands that say, how do I get my wife off of Instagram? We've
Oh
seen.
man, I'm sure you get it from wives too. How do I get my husband to stop watching YouTube videos about building
Right. No,
stuff?
no, no. It's not. That's more gaming with the husbands and that. How do I
Yeah,
get my husband to get off the video games and come
you
hang
have
out with
so
me?
much access now to so much
Right.
technology, so many things.
Totally. And it's such a part of the fabric of our society at this juncture in time, and
For sure.
especially for this next generation that's going to
Yeah.
be coming, where
Digital natives.
yeah, digital natives, they've never known a time when they couldn't connect with their friends and family from the palm of their hand. That so much of the economy that they engage in is a digital realm. For better or for worse, the play yard or the empty sand lot where games were played and people would hang out is now in a digital realm where they're connecting via a video game platform. They're talking with each other, their interaction with each other, they're playing with each other, and they're doing it through avatars and through characters. And that's part of the community engagement. And it's also where the socializing is happening. And rather it would be the kind of maybe the record store of sorts of the 70s and 80s, where you might go down and hang out with your friends and listen to new records that came out and engage kind of the social happenings of pop culture of that day. Now all that's happening in a digital realm, right? It's happening through social media applications. It's happening through kind of chatting with each other and group chats, and um, and so there's a certain element of it that we need to accept and understand as being different than the culture that we grew up in, and yet not inherently evil or wrong or bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think, I have a lot of friends who are moms now, and going into this new generation and raising up this new generation where socialization and what you do with your time and all of these different things is so radically different than what we grew up with. And it can be difficult because it's like, how do you understand something that you never had?
Mhm. Totally. And then you throw in the mix, COVID-19
Uh,
this year, right? Where all the in-person opportunities of youth group and after school hangout and socializing and sports and so many of the different things that would be the offline social interaction for teenagers has been eliminated through for a period of time, and it's forced all of that remaining into an online context in order to have any kind of interaction and socialization. So that's only exacerbated, and accelerated that phenomena from taking place. So I don't think it's something that's going away. Like I don't think that that's a trend in human history that we're going to see reverse and go away. And so the question then is kind of how do we prepare folks to engage a balanced life of both in-person and online relationships and engagement, and to teach kids, emphasize with kids the importance of both, and by being able to be balanced with that kind of within the home for sure, and the way we model that, meaning that we are intentional about doing things as a family and engaging as a family offline, that we make a point to engage activities that are going to be analog as a family and interact with each other, and also allow space for the doing of life in an online context without demonizing that or kind of considering it an all bad thing, and educating our kiddos about the world that they have access to, right? Which is a broader world than than it was when it was all analog. And there's a lot that you could shelter kids from in terms of access to ideas and thoughts and information that in a digital realm is a lot more difficult to kind of shield kids from. And yet there's a human factor around our curiosity that isn't any different. Like whether it's in an analog world and we're like, hey, don't look behind this curtain, and that what does every kid want to do? Wants to look behind the curtain, right? What is it that you're hiding from me? What is it that I'm not supposed to know? Or what's the big secret that's out there?
Right.
That exists in the digital realm as well, right? If it's just like, don't go here, don't look there, don't do this, don't.
I think of even, with a 3-year-old, how you're like, don't touch the stove. And that's their first thing they want to do.
They're like, oh yeah, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So a better strategy or approach, rather than just the don't kind of piece, is to talk about what's behind the curtain, right? And be like, okay, here's what this is. Here's why it's concerning. Here's where it's dangerous. Here's the effect that it can have on your life.
Right. And talking to them, like the adults that they're going to be, talking to them, getting on that level of like, hey, I'm going to talk to you because you have access to this stuff and I'm not going to dumb it down for you. This is what it is.
Totally. And that doesn't mean that you need to have like agreement from all your teenagers about the boundaries or structures that you put in place. Like they still may not agree with you that this is harmful or that's not good. And that's okay. You don't need them to sign off on the rules that you have or the boundaries that you have as an adult, but you do need to engage a dialogue around those things and show them the perspective, hearing them out as to how they see it, and sharing with them honestly about the problem you have with it and why. And at the end of the day, kind of establishing the rules and the structures based on what your convictions are and what you believe the Lord would have you do in your home and raising your kids.
Yeah, I see the twofold of, the adult, the parent, learning, this is your society now. Tell me about it. Share your heart with me. Share why this is important to you. And then also, the kid learning, I have to respect the rules that my parents set. I got to get outside. I got to, you know what I mean? I think it's just this twofold where you're both learning together. The digital native is learning how to not be on their phone, and the parent is learning that this is, the life that you have now, and trying to understand that.
Yeah, and in the world that those kids are going to grow up in as well, right? Like if you go back 20 plus years ago, right, and the internet was barely a thing, right? And now, in the midst of COVID-19, there's a huge chunk of the economy and jobs, the majority of it, that's happening in an online context, right? And that there's no sector of the economy that the online world, the internet, doesn't touch. And so there's an entirely different world and generation that's happening right now. And these kids that are, in high school at this juncture, junior high, high school, the world that they're engaging is going to be very much one that is internet first, analog second. And so they're learning through games and social media the tools of society that they're going to use until the Lord returns or for the rest of their life, because that's the way the world is going to be operating and is operating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an amazing tool that we have now. It's incredible. And the amount of progress, with technology that has been made in just the past 20 years. I mean, it's awesome. But of course, with it comes a whole new set of challenges that have never been seen before, that we've never
Totally.
experienced, that I didn't have growing up, that we're all having to learn together as we raise up this next generation of digital natives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's to kind of hone in on the question a little bit. There's a need to not kind of demonize or stereotype that really natural tendency that your daughter has to engage what's first nature for her and for her entire generation. And like that's her just engaging what is first nature for her. And it's very different than the world that you grew up in. But that doesn't make it inherently evil and bad just because it's different. And so we don't want to fall into the same kind of trappings that every generation faces in terms of what you're comfortable with and what you grew up with and what seems like, is the thing because it's what is familiar to you and you're comfortable with. Then kind of looks on the next generation that's coming up and going, those kids and there's new things that they're doing, which I'm sure goes back to like Adam and Eve. I'm sure at every kind of generation has had those things that were changing. And it's picked up in speed, I think, is more rapidly evolved in the last 100 years than,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But try to be understanding of her and the world that she lives in and is growing up in, and be clear in communicating the fears that you have and the values that you have and the things that you want her to be balanced in. And maybe try to think about it in those terms instead of an either or piece going, okay, this is valid. This is kind of the generation that you're growing up in. And I want to try to enter into that with you some and understand that better, what this means to you, why this is significant to you in the way that it is. And there's some things over here that I think need to balance that out in your life and that are important to me and to instill in you. And these may be more like eating broccoli for you than kind of eating candy or what you would maybe prefer to be eating. But as your parent who loves you and knows you and knows how life works, I know these things are going to be valuable for you to be engaged in and a part of as well.